Okay, so why don't we go ahead and get started here. Welcome to the first pre-con session of the ACP Conference 2017. We named these things pre-conference because the conference used to start tomorrow and we'd have a few people would come in early, so we'd have these sessions. But now it's really kind of part of the mainstream conference. So maybe next year we just call them day one conference presentations. But these are always fun because these conference presentations are designed to be a combination of a vendor and a district. So it's not just, you're not just listening to a vendor stick. Not that there's anything wrong with vendor sticks, but you're listening to a district that's actually implemented the product and have a chance to ask questions of not only the vendor, but districts that have actually done the work. So we're pretty excited about these sessions, and we hope you enjoy this session, because I'm supposed to say for the video that's on there, by the way, these are recorded, and we'll put them up on the website. So if you guys want to watch yourself present a few times, you can do that. So this session is Inflow Communications is the vendor, working with Beaverton School District in a session titled, Are You Leveraging Your Phone System for Student Safety? So with that, I'm going to introduce Mike Doloff from Inflow, and take it away, Mike.
All right. Thanks, Tom.
All right. Wonderful. We'll do a quick round of, or let me give you a quick agenda just so you know how the next hour is going to be spent. We're going to walk through introductions we'll have 4 presenters today. I'll kind of give some of the context of the topic. So what are some of the use cases for the phone system's role in student safety? And then we'll turn it over to Jordan and Jerry from Beaverton School District to talk through their experiences, some of the gotchas, some of the things that worked well, didn't work as they thought they would, to really share all that knowledge. And then we'll demo at the end. We'll demo a lot of the things we're talking about. So you'll see them in action, and or hear them in action, and then we'll have time for a Q&A at the end. So we'll jump into introductions really quick. I'm going to pass this to you guys to start us off.
I'm Jordan Beveridge. I'm the administrator for tech services for Beaverton.
I'm Jerry Tice, telecommunications engineer for Beaverton.
Perfect. Chris, say hello real quick.
Chris Mitchell, VP of Solution Architecture with Inflow Communications.
Awesome. And I'm Mike Doloff, VP of Sales and Marketing for Inflow Communications. So between all of us, a lot of experience on technology, phone systems. Inflow as a company is we really focus on phone systems. The main product we work with is ShoreTel. ShoreTel does a lot of business in the K-12 market. We're a platinum partner there. So I was trying to do math the other day of how many school districts do we work with. I think it's somewhere between 15 and 20 and about over 25,000 different phones in those environments that we work with. So a lot of experience implementing, supporting, and really optimizing. So want to share some of that knowledge with you. So to jump right into the topic of the phone system, where the role of that can play. So the first part is within the phone system itself, or staying really tight within the system itself, automation and streamlining of additional communications when a button is pushed on the phone. So let's say an extension's dialed, or we've got a button that's pre-programmed to trigger a lockdown. When that happens, additional communication that the phone system can do. And some of those things are additional phone calls. So a 911 call is placed, and maybe we want phone calls to go out and ring additional, maybe internal phones, maybe their cell phones, to let that person know, hey, a 911 call is being placed right now from extension such and such, room such and such. So other things like screen pops will show some of these. So a pop on a display, so potentially there's somebody in the staff working at the computer to pop a message that, hey, a particular type of phone call has been placed from the system. Other things like actually displaying on the handset of the phone itself, so flashing a particular color as a way to kind of notify that a particular event's happening. Email or SMS if we want something text-based that's going out, providing details and information. And a lot of this will, of course, show you examples of this. Another one, of course, through the phone speaker. So if we want an audible notification, a call's been placed and we want something to go out audibly, instead of going through overhead paging, which is another one, potentially there's areas where we don't have overhead paging. Is there a way to broadcast that through the phone speakers themselves? So a lot of different ways, and kind of the point of that and where the phone system can help with these basic things are if button A was pushed, which is a lockdown, let's say, what are the other sequential things we want to have happen that are kind of contained within the phone system? So that's one part of it. Some of the use cases, I mentioned 911. So 911 calls placed. We want to notify potentially with a phone call, potentially with email, potentially with screen pops. In that particular case, we would not want to necessarily broadcast that to everyone. Maybe just pinpoint to certain members. something like a lockdown or lockout, potentially that is something we want to get out to everybody, not just even staff, right? Students, other people that might be on the campus at that given time. So it can be a very broad range type of notification. And in that case, and then the last one, these are kind of, we're thinking in terms of emergencies, but sometimes it's not necessarily an emergency per se, but it's something related to safety, maybe a hazard, maybe something like teacher assist is needed in a classroom. So the ability to notify, again, maybe select staff, maybe it's somebody janitorial, custodial, maybe it's somebody from the front office or or a specialist in the school. So those are all kind of, most of those are pretty much contained within the phone system itself, which is a little bit different than, and a lot of these, can happen really within the phone system. The next piece of this is really, okay, let's look at extending beyond the phone system. So what other systems are out there that are really have a purpose, maybe directly or indirectly for safety for the campus? How do we tap in or tie into those? So an obvious one that's in use in a lot of places is paging systems. So there's an existing paging system in a lot of schools. They're really old paging systems. Sometimes they're newer, but a lot of times they're legacy paging systems. So how do we tap into that? So somebody could pick up a handset and do a broadcast page through it, maybe for something ad hoc. Or if we want to have a pre-recorded message play over those paging systems, if it was in the event of an emergency where we wanted to get that message out to everybody quickly and in a very in a process and a cadence that isn't under duress because of the situation. So paging systems, easy one. All of these types of integrations, too, I should point out, integrations to me sound sometimes like a scary word. I think with the phone system here, we're really talking about, these are analog connections, so they're really like an analog extension off of a phone system, or they're an IP extension and they're a SIP device, for example, or a SIP trunk. And SIP is a newer protocol and process, newer in the last decade or so. So really, from a standpoint of phone system, these are extensions. These systems become extensions off of the phone system. So a number's dialed and it triggers something downstream for paging, for example. Third-party applications is kind of a big bucket, but think, for example, like the Bell scheduler. But some of the things that can happen when you tap into a system like this can be maybe the phone system proper doesn't allow you to page through all the phones you'd want to in one batch. Some of the applications allow you to really do a big broadcast through IP handsets for paging, for overhead paging purposes, for handset paging purposes. Other times, like I mentioned earlier, kind of like a display on the phones, or reader boards. Sometimes some of the newer classrooms or with upgrades, reader boards happen. Those can be parts that become involved in like a lockdown procedure or something like that. Another one, very common, I think, if you look at like the call box on the upper left there, a lot of times some of the schools have these little boxes, right, to keep a secure entrance. And so the ability for that to be a part of the phone system, meaning it's an extension off the system. So if somebody dials that, it rings the handset phone or the handset that's already at the front desk, and they can press a button to let that door open. And the same thing, the last one is an interesting one. I'd say this is probably one of the ones where there's the most potential and upside and learning to still happen, I would say, is in access control systems. So I know Beaverton will talk a lot about this in just a moment, which is tying in the phone system so that if a lockdown occurs, we're doing notification through the phone system, overhead paging. We're providing messaging and immediate notification to people that are at the district level, maybe not at that physical location. What about access control? How do we tie into that as well to maybe automate and streamline some of these processes? So if there's a single event, staff in the district don't have to go to 4 or 5 different places to initiate different procedures. Maybe they can just go to one or reduce that number. So with that, I'm going to turn it over now to Jordan and Jerry to kind of talk through some of the real-world examples of this.
So when we started down this road, our public safety and some other departments had already done some really good work with our lockdown, lockouts, reunification procedures, all of those type of things, and we continue to refine those. And so we worked a lot as we started to talk about this. We also had bond project security upgrades going on at our schools that was really on its sort of own path over here, and we were working on phone system over here. And as we talked more and more, it was nice to be able to integrate those together and not have 2, 3 different systems all trying to compete to do somewhat the same things. So we worked a lot with our public safety department, both our first responders for fire and police, sheriff's department, worked with schools. Another thing that we brought in, and more recently, and have had lots of discussion with, is in Washington County, called WACA, they run the 911 system, and so those dispatch, and talk to them a lot too about what is a good time for us to call, when should we call, as far as because sometimes when you're getting these type of alerts, you know something's going on, but you don't know what. Okay, so when do they want us to call them? At what point? And so we've had some of those conversations. Some of the goals they started to get into is, one, that anyone can initiate a lockdown or lockout. We wanted to reduce the time for alerting others that may be in danger. We wanted to alert those that need to be made aware around the district that something's happening. And then, as Mike just said, try to reduce as much as possible all the little manual steps that have to happen to make all these things work. So that first thing of anyone initiating, that took some. It was honestly in the small group at central office with talking with public safety and first responders and others. That wasn't that big of a hurdle to get over. People sort of got it right away. But when we went out to schools, a lot of them sort of had trouble with that because they typically controlled that. People didn't even call 911. If you wanted to call 911, you called the office and then asked them if you could call 911. And same thing with lockout or lockdown, those type of things. If something was going on, you called the office. Somebody got the message, talked to the principal, okay, yeah, we'll go into lockdown or lockout. And make those decisions, unless first responders were actually coming and telling them to go into lockdown or lockout. So that was a little bit of a discussion there. And well, what if we have false alarms? What if students press it? You know, all those questions started arising, and it was nice to have actually first responders, some of the police department there and our SROs. They were really more like, we'd rather have a couple false alarms and show up and there be nothing going on than when the time it's actually real to get here, whatever it is, seconds, minutes earlier than we would have with you doing it the other way. And so that was nice to have them in those meetings with us so people could hear that. And that discussion sort of stopped at that point. Reducing the time to alert, and so anyone initiating, it really came down to the phone because it was sort of the only piece of equipment that was easy to use that was everywhere. In offices, at every desk, in every classroom, in conference rooms, you know, so it was pretty simple that we wanted to do that through the phone system. Reducing that time to alert, again, as we started talking about that, well, getting rid of one of those manual pieces. Okay, you've got an alert that we're going into lockdown. Now somebody's got to get on the intercom and tell the school. Well, how do we automate that? And so we wanted to automate that. We ended up deciding on going in an automated recorded message rather than, it can do text to speech and automate it that way, but we wanted a live human voice. And we actually went more with sort of a more calm delivery of that to try to not to induce sort of panic was our thought. That, hey, school is in lockdown, you know, and if it's a lockdown, it's locks, lights, out of sight. It just reminded them, and it repeated that message twice over the intercom system. And so that was, we decided to go with that. And then the alerting. So on the alerting, we made a few decisions on that, some based on how quickly to get it out, and others based on how we could support it ongoing. So when any of those things go out, we wanted to get the room. So what room did this alert, extension, and what time did it occur for if we had to backtrack and find things. But the room and extension, of course, are important because then we know where it's going on in the building. We wanted to send out email and text email was easy. We just send out to specific groups of people, sort of down at the bottom there. So the school administration, the front office is definite, because if you get hang-ups, they're going to get the call back from 911 saying, hey, we had a call from 911 from the school, so they need to know what classroom did that come from, because previously they had no idea. And so someone would have to go walk around the school and make sure everything was okay before they could tell or give a clear. With this, they know exactly what room and extension called out. The text was where we made the decision. The system can do it. We could enter in people's phone numbers and do that. Really came down to just long-term having to upkeep that with all of our schools, with our 54 schools and public safety office and community involvement office and risk management office and everybody who needed to get them, and keeping all their phone numbers updated as people came in and out. We decided we didn't want to do that. Okay, so what we've done is within our email system, users can set up to get text messages, and so that's the way we've gone about that. And so we have created instructions. They go into their email account in Office 365. They go in and set up a specific forward to text in there. So as soon as that 911 or lockdown lock message hits their email, they get a text from that system. That keeps us from having to manage all of those phone numbers. Just with the size of the district and number of people we'd have to do that for, it's just, I didn't think that was going to be manageable for us, that it would always be wrong. Somewhere in there there'd always be wrong numbers, bad numbers, people left, all those type of things. So that's how we're doing text. We're doing it from our email system, but the system can do text. You can enter them in if you want to do it. Desktops, pop-ups, that with ours is only available on Windows clients. So we do have a number of, majority of our especially middle and elementary schools are all Mac. So they don't have the ability to get those pop-ups. But our public safety office and a few others do have Windows. So anybody who has Windows devices, we do. Or if they have a monitoring system in their department for different things, those are typically on a Windows client. And so those have all been set up to get the pop-ups for that to occur. At the district level, then it's also the public safety, risk management, public relations, and IT. And we give everybody a choice on 911 calls. Everybody gets them for lockdown, lockout. There's a lot more 911 calls than there are all lockdown, lockout. So some of those groups have chosen, I don't need to know every 911 call that goes out. And so some of those groups get them for 911. Everybody gets them for lockdown, lockout.
Is that typical phone, feature phone?
So that's typical phone. Yeah, so the lockdown, lockout is down there in the bottom left-hand corner. We did that on all phones in the same spot because we wanted to be consistent no matter what school you went to, for subs, all those kind of people that are in and out of the system. That's how they do that.
Question, Jordan. When you say everybody gets lockdowns at every location, so everybody gets everything. You don't try to pin it to specific locations for people, right? Or I only want to see this school and this school, this one.
So it's at every location, but it is location specific. So if I push the button at Bethany Elementary, it only alerts at Bethany Elementary. Okay.
But that's the notification too.
The notifications go out to Bethany's administration, Bethany's front office, all of the SROs that work in our system. And then at the district level, public safety, risk management, public relations, and IT get all of them. And that's just our alerting system in IT and GRE. So that's how we originally set it up. The system, when you pushed the lockout, we wanted it to be a single push, is what they'd asked. We originally thought about doing codes. We were like, people aren't going to remember codes when it's an emergency. So that's when we ended up going to the buttons. And the way we set it up was when they pushed the button, said you're about to initiate a lockdown in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If it got to 1 and ended, it launched. If they hung up Before then, it wouldn't launch. It would stop it. So if somebody accidentally hit the button, they just had to hang up the phone, push the speakerphone button, whatever you would normally do to hang up the phone. It just stops everything. At that point, alerts don't go out, paging system doesn't go off, and all of those things. It was also thought it would be nice that they could just push it and walk away and not have to interact with it at that point, dependent on the emergency. So that was how we set up that base. Then the paging system went off and delivered the message either for lockout or lockdown, depending on which button they pushed. So that was our initial setup. All should work perfectly.
Change the slide. Okay, so that was our initial thought. And a lot of the teachers, they were worried when we did the meetings and talked about what we were going to do. They were worried about false alarms. And we, like Jordan said, we had the police come in. They said we'd rather have a few false alarms than not have this system. Well, first 2 months we had 250 false alarms. Lockdown and lockout. I got a text for every one of them. Sometimes 6 or 7 texts in 2 minutes or 1 minute. And the main problem was, as you can see up here, do not push button again. The ShoreTel system, when you press the lockdown button, and we found out when people panic, they don't hang up the phone, they press the button again, they hit it again and hit it again and hit it again. So they just send out 4 or 5 lockdowns to our system. Because it just selects a new line, selects a new line, selects a new line, puts that call on hold, puts that call on hold, puts that call on hold, and it sends out several lockdowns. The system starts, the intercom system goes off, tells the school they're in lockdown about 14 times. So this happened over and over again, and people started getting complacent about the lockdown, lockout. So we decided in the last month or so, 2 months ago, to go with a 2-stage lockout. What that means is they press the button, the voice comes on and says, you're about to initiate a lockdown. To confirm the initiation of a lockdown, press 1. Otherwise, hang up. Since then, we've had no false alarms. So it was unintentional false alarms. We can almost guarantee that, well, maybe 1 or 2 were intentional, and those children were dealt with. But that was the biggest worry. So when people pressed 1, they're initiated, she says lockdown initiated, and it works perfectly. So we had to go from, those of you familiar with the phone systems, a route point that just goes straight to the unit and starts activating the alert system, to an automated attendance system to where they have to select 1 to send it to the route point. And that is working perfectly, so we are there now.
We had, I don't know how many sessions we did on how to hang up a phone before we finally said, okay, it's no longer a training issue. We got to change the system.
Yeah, so that has worked, and we have gone with that. First, like Jordan said, we wanted to be able to, people in a panic situation, push the button and be able to run into another room. It's just, unfortunately, there was too many false alarms, way too many. And with the people pressing it over and over again because they're panicking, it just didn't work out. So we went to a 2-stage, and it's working perfectly now. You might get, if you do go with the system, you might, if you have the ShoreTel phones with the 8 buttons, you might get complaints that people are going to lose their speed dials. Luckily, we had the meetings with the safety, public safety, and teaching and learning and other departments. They decided that the lockdown, lockout was more important than someone's speed dial to their administrator. So we did go in that direction. So on every single phone in the district, and we use the exact same phone for 99% of our phones, they have the lockdown, lockout button in the exact same place. Another thing is, Jordan brought up that we went with a complacent voice. We had my coworker Alice record the voice. Your school is now in lockdown. Locks, lights, out of sight. And that's pretty much what it sounded like. So now people were like, they're ignoring it. But they didn't hear it. So we have this, one of my other coworkers, Tracy, who has a really deep radio voice. And we had him record it, and we'll show you that in a minute. But it's more locked down, and he really gets into it. So and we extended the time because it played twice, and we found out that wasn't enough. People just, it's over. So we decided to go with a 30-second interval, which is about 3 times. Each one is about 3 times, and that seems to be a little more it doesn't go away. It keeps going, and people realize, hey, maybe this is real. So
that came from the schools. They said this has got to be more urgent, so that people know it's an urgent situation. And two, it needs to be a little more like a fire alarm, or it just keeps going. People know they need to get out. Same thing here; they need to keep hearing it. And we settled on the 30-second because you basically have to set how many loops you want it to run through. And that's what we're doing.
And a couple things you got to remember. Other pains that might not be on here, I just thought about, are you are using your antiquated old paging systems. So if you have problems with your paging systems now, this is not going to make it better. We found that out. We didn't know that some of our paging systems really suck. It's just we found this out because when they pressed the button, some people didn't hear it at all. But that's more of your paging system problem, not a lockdown, lockout issue. But just something you got to look into.
Highlight those problems and make them more urgent.
Yeah, and if you have a loudspeaker that blasts to the neighbors, they will hear it. So.
Now, with the short telephones, can you page over the phones like you can with some brands?
Yes, great question. So the district office, the admin building, does not have an overhead paging system. So we put the lockdown, lockout buttons on our phones, the district office, and that goes through every phone in the building. Because it's an IP system, you can't simply just page every phone at once if you have 300 phones in our building. So it goes in a staged cycle. So it'll say a lockdown has been initiated, and it'll hit these 100 phones, then these 100 phones, then these, and it'll work our way around the building. So if you hit the lockdown button, it could take 15 seconds to get to the entire building. So just keep that in mind.
How are you pushing the button out to all the phones?
We paid Inflow to do it. It is a painstaking thing to do.
So it's an individual by individual.
It's an individual. You have to program every button to have a lockdown, lockout button.
Because of that, we petitioned ShoreTel, and they did add a mass program button feature in the new version. So Beaver News hasn't rolled the new version out, but we can mass program finally. So no more school districts manually programming 5,000 phones. So.
Yeah, if we would have thought about, if we would have had this ready when we installed the phone system, it would have been easy because they were putting the phones in, they're programming the buttons for us. But we put our phones in, and then we did this later, so we had to go back and touch every phone. So yeah, it's kind of a pain in the butt. I think that's it for this slide, correct? So what we also did, and it was briefly mentioned, is this came up after the fact. People were asking us, somehow it got mentioned that the lockdown was going to also do something with our alarm system and lock the doors and do the things that we needed to do. So we did some research with Inflow and found this device here. This is pretty much just a IP circuit device, which will open or close a circuit. So if you're familiar with any kind of circuit or device that will open and close a circuit, that's what this does. So this is hooked to our ShoreTel system as a IP extension or a SIP extension. When someone hits the lockdown button or the lockout button, it'll send a signal to the alarm system, which opens or closes a circuit, and it'll, if you have the card readers on the doors, it'll lock the exterior doors for you at that exact time. So no more people running around with a key locking the doors during a lockout situation. During a lockdown situation, it'll open the exterior doors and close in sections of the building. So we have 2 of these at every school that has the card readers installed. Obviously, you can't use these in a building that still has key locks. But we have tested it. It works perfectly. So it's great integration. Yes?
What happens if the kids are on a recess? Somebody does lunch.
Jordan?
So, I'm just saying if there's
There's
something.
a lot of discussions about all this. So
Okay.
there's not always a right answer. So it's what do we think's best. And so what they ended up deciding on a lock out, it locks the exterior doors. They have still, my understanding is they're still going to leave them in a card reader access. So if you're a teacher and you're out there with your kids, you can swipe, let them in, the door will relock on close. That creates all kinds of issues. I mean, we could talk about that forever. So, but that's my last understanding. That's what they were. We're sending the toggle, The security system does all the programming on the back end of what happens, which doors lock, which doors unlock. It's taking that switch flip that, hey, on, off, it gets the signal, and then they program what they want from the public safety side. On lock, as Jerry said, on lock down, police want access to the building, so we open the exterior doors if they're in locked mode. Some of the larger buildings do have interior doors that are both fire doors or security doors that can automatically close. On those, on a lockdown, those will automatically close if they have that capability and lock. So it sections off parts of the building. But the exterior doors, police want access on a lockdown, so they're not having to break into the building to get in to help. So that's where they're at on that right now.
So on this device here, the TKIS2, it's a great little device. For those of you interested, all you have to do to program is you have to IP it, give it an SIP extension, program the ShoreTel to talk to the system, give it an extension, and then you program the TKIS to when a call is placed to the unit, it opens or closes a circuit. So if I were to call, if this extension on this phone is 885412, and I call that extension, it closes the circuit. It's that easy. Once I figured these little units out, they're really easy to program, and they work really very well. A little pricey, but they do the job. And like I said, we have 2 of these at every school that has the card reader access, one for lockdown and one for lockout. And they're hooked directly to our Linnell or alarm system, just as a circuit is programmed by our security company to do the rest. I don't handle that part.
How much?
I think they're between $900 and $1,100. That's my best guess. I think that's retail. You might get a better deal. No, it's handled by the alarm system. So it just opens and closes the circuit. It does like a meh, and the alarm system does the rest. Once it sends that signal, the unit goes back to idle state. Great. So I think we have we did the video.
We had a video that we developed for training. We had to rework it after we made the change to the confirm stage. And so this is what we set up so that schools, again, is a training piece. So principals and those, as they had their staff meetings, as we were rolling this out to each school, we did it in waves. Each week we did 4 or 5 schools. And so they knew that was coming, and so they were able to have a meeting with their staff, show this video, and then answer any questions they had. Just need to turn it off and on.
I already tested this earlier.
It was played earlier.
That was earlier.
That wasn't now.
You have to
Oh, yeah, it might be trying to send it out the HDMI.
It's probably sending
other speaker.
We're about to initiate a lockdown. Press 1 to confirm activation.
The 2015-16 school year, the district installed a new phone system funded by the May 2014 bond program. This phone system includes security features that will soon be activated at your school. You will be able to initiate a lockdown or lock out at the touch of a button. Please watch the following short training video to learn how to use these new features.
In the event you need to initiate a lockdown, simply press the lockdown button located on the left side of the phone screen. You will immediately hear a message asking you to confirm the lockdown. You are about to initiate a lockdown. Press 1 to confirm activation of a lockdown.
Lockdown initiated.
Automatic notifications will be sent to the administrator and other staff in the building. Certain individuals at the District Administration Center will also be alerted. A message will be broadcast over your school's intercom system. The school is now in lockdown. Locked. Lights out of sight. The school is now in lockdown. Locked. Lights out of sight. Proceed to follow the instructions given over the intercom. The system does not call 911. Someone in the building will need to do that. Please note, if you push the lockdown button in error, simply hang up the phone. Do not push the lockdown button again. Never confirm activation unless you intend to go into lockdown. This process is nearly identical for lockout. Simply press the lockout button on the left side of the phone screen. You will immediately hear a message asking you to confirm the lockout. You are about to initiate a lockout. Press 1 to confirm activation of a lockout. Hang up.
Lockout initiated.
Automatic notifications will be sent to the administrator and other staff in the building. Certain individuals at the District Administration Center will also be alerted. A message will be broadcast over your school's intercom system. The school is now in lockout. Secure the perimeter. The school is now in lockout. Secure the perimeter. Proceed to follow instructions given over the intercom. The system does not call 911. Please note that if a student presses the button and then confirms, it creates a false alarm. The disciplinary action will be the same as a pulled fire alarm.
Thank you for helping to ensure the safety of students and staff.
As you saw there, so the false alarms went to nothing, as Jerry said. So we had to come back with our first responders and say, okay, we've sort of reset now. What do we do if we actually get one? Somebody pushes it and confirms. The assumption is something's going on that we need to respond. So they know that. They would respond. As we talked to 911 dispatch, they preferred us to go ahead and call, even if the school has not called yet, or they want our public safety office to go ahead and call them and tell them what they know. Hey, all we know right now is the button's been pushed and confirmed, that there's a lockdown in this room, and they assume they'll be getting a call. The reason we can't have the system call is because 911 can't accept an automated phone call. They won't do that. They don't allow that to come in. And so we can't have the system call it, but they want us to go ahead and call right away. And they figure if there's really something going on, they're going to get multiple calls because of people's cell phones and those things, and they'll start to piece together information. So they'd rather us go ahead and call them with whatever information we have at that point, which at that point would just be it's a lockdown or lockout, and this is who called and where they're at in the building as the school starts to investigate.
So one thing, when someone presses the button on the phone, the little pop that Mike showed earlier with the lockdown screen pop and the emails, we have it set to where it shows the extension, the site it's calling from, the location, which could be room A105, and the time and date of that call. You get all that in an email and also on the pop-up. So it's very specific, and if you have the mail rule set up, like Jordan said, you can also get a text of that. So when someone hits the lockdown button, I get a pop-up, an email, a text, all simultaneously. Lets me know what is happening, and then if someone calls me, where did this come from? I can say A105 at a lower high school. So it's pretty cool.
All right. So now we're going to do some live demonstrations here. So I've
done as best I could to set up my demo system the same way as Beaverton's learning system is set up. So I'm going to show 4 different types of options here. First, I'm going to show a secure entrance. So somebody walks into a school and needs to gain access to the building. And then I'll show a 911 call. And then I'll show a lockdown, and I'll show a teacher assist. So I want to show kind of a mixture between emergency, and non-emergency capabilities of the system. So starting off with secure access, this is simply a Viking door access door phone. Viking, a bunch of different companies make them. The big thing you want to make sure is if you're looking for one, they make them in analog or SIP, and you want to make sure that they have the capability to connect to a door strike system. So in this case, when a button is pressed, we can ring one phone or we can ring a number of phones in the front office. So as I press the button here, it just rings to whichever phone. We open it up, we have two-way communication. And as you're talking to whoever's at the door, if you want to grant access to them, then there's a single digit press on the phone. You press a digit, or you can program with two buttons on the phone, and then it opens that door strike, so then go ahead and come in. So for secure access, very easy to integrate. There's even systems that integrate cameras in with it. So the phone piece takes care of it through the phone system. Then you can have a monitor in the office that actually shows the camera access on that secure entrance. So as we see more and more school districts, pretty much all are going to secure entrance. They already haven't done that. So it's a great way to integrate that into the phone system and allow you to ring multiple phones. So if somebody's not happen to be at that front desk, you can ring to principals, assistant principals' phones, wherever you need to ring, so they can answer that call and let people in the school as needed. So the next one I'm going to show, we'll do the non-emergency first. We'll show teacher assist. So you have a teacher who's in a classroom. Primarily, we use this. This was originally designed for a school district who had for their either alternative schools or special needs classrooms, so they could, if a teacher needs to just request this, it's not an emergency, but maybe they just need another body in the classroom to help deal with with an issue. So you can program on your phones, similar to how we did the lockdown. We can program an assist button. So I just programmed here in the bottom of this phone. It says assist, and all a teacher has to do is simply press that button. And we have all the same alerting capabilities that we have with a lockdown or a 911 call. We can screen pop. We can ring to a group of phones, letting them know that a teacher needs assistance. We can send out an email. Everything like that we see on the emergency side. So I'll go ahead and press the assist button.
This is the ShoreTel 911 alert system.
So on the computer speakers, I can play an alert on a computer. At the same time, I'm ringing to it.
Teacher assistance was requested by Mike Dolphin. Press any key to acknowledge this message. Attention. Please send assistance immediately.
So we can play the text-to-speech. So it grabs, it'll play the information what teacher requested the assistance, and then and that's all customizable, so it can say whatever we need it to do. But more importantly, like Jerry mentioned, the screen pop that we get, similar to the email, we can control what information's in this. So here we can see the date and time, the caller's extension, the name. It has the location. If the teacher has a classroom on file with the system, it'll actually show that it'll give you a classroom number right there. So it's at a classroom 103. And then we can put in whatever message we want to present to these people, like, what's the next step that they need to be doing. And this will stay up and making the noise on their computer until they silence it and then acknowledge it. That's the only way to make it go away. And if you have 10 windows up, it doesn't matter what you have up. This, it comes up to the top of the screen until they hit, until they hit acknowledge. If you notice, there's no X to close out of the window. They have to acknowledge it to make it go away.
How many computers can that pop up?
So we can screen pop 50 computers simultaneously by default. We can stretch beyond that. I think ShoreTel's expanded it up to 100 computers if we need to screen up to 100. It's just a tweak in the code on the application.
Is that an add-on to Communicator?
So it's a standalone application that we install, so it can be loaded on computers that don't have Communicator or dedicated computers. It's not tied to the ShoreTel desktop application at all.
Does it continue to say anything in the room where the teacher requested assistance? I just know in circumstances when someone is upset in the classroom,
yeah,
and they continue to hear that, they're going to go for the phone.
So in this case, if you notice when I pushed the assist button, nothing happened in the classroom. It was a single press of the phone. The button didn't come off. I can make it where in some classrooms when they want to push that assist button, they want to transfer that call to maybe the front desk. And we have that option that we can, on the button, we can do the alert, but then we can also transfer that call to like say the front desk or something so they can talk to a live body, as needed. In this case, we wanted a silent alert. So I hit the button. Teacher simply walks over, like they're picking something up to the desk. They can simply hit the assist button and walk away.
That's what I
And there's the phone doesn't go off hook, it doesn't ring, any of that kind of stuff for you.
Push one again,
Yeah,
like earlier.
Exactly. So in that case, it's non-emergency, so we didn't want to design make a push of one. It's just a way to alert a few staff members that there's some assistance that's non-emergency assistance needed in this case. And you can tell as I go through the different alerts, they're all different color. They're all color coded. So if you have any kind of a color coding sequence, you can control what colors those alerts are. So in this case, I just picked green. So So 911, we've talked about, when people initiate a lockdown, 911 isn't called. But maybe when somebody presses 911, we probably don't want to go on the overhead speaker and announce to everybody that a 911 call was placed. But we still probably want to do some screen pops, some phone calls. So we have that same capability, in a 911 call. And the nice thing is when we set up the system, you can set up a fake extension for 911. If you want to run drills or anything like that for testing purposes, we can set up, an extension for that. So as I'm calling, so in this case, I'm going to dial 911.
Attention. This is the ShoreTel 911 alert system. A call alert requires acknowledgement on this word.
So, off of my computer still.
This is the ShoreTel 911 alert system.
So then as I answer here.
This is the ShoreTel emergency notification system calling. An emergency call was placed by user Mike Dolph from extension 1003 from location at site Beaverton High School. Press any key to acknowledge this call.
So the nice thing is for acknowledging, we can track that from a log. So if we call out to somebody's cell phone and they answer and they hit a digit to, we can log on, who acknowledged those calls and who didn't acknowledge those calls. So we can call it internal extensions or cell phones. There's no difference to the system. Similar to the screen pop capabilities, we have capabilities to send phone calls out to 50 different extensions or phone numbers simultaneously. Obviously, that depends on the amount of dial tone we have to accommodate that. If we're going to send outbound to 50 cell phones, we need to make sure we have enough dial tone to support that. If you're doing a bunch of internal extensions and cell phones mixed, it's usually not a problem. With the screen pop here, you see we went to a red, instead of a green for emergency. We have all that same information. We've also put a message to let them know that they need to head to the front of the school so they can direct emergency services to the classroom, that you have. So in Beaverton, we went ahead and programmed, classroom information so that when the screen pop, all of the caller locations had the classroom assigned, to the phone in there. So same thing here is I have to acknowledge this to make it go away. But you noticed the phone kept ringing on my test phone that I placed the call because it was simulating placing the call out to 911. It was doing alert, but it was still waiting for 911 to answer. So typically you hit that button, it starts the alert, and then that outbound call still connects outbound to 911. By default, in ShoreTel's emergency notification system, we can also record those 911 calls. So we don't record any other calls in the system, but we can record the 911 calls. So if you need if the public relations or school safety, you need to go back and listen to those 911 calls, we can record all those, just the 911 calls, so they can be referenced back for future purposes.
Reference what classroom based on the name of the phone?
Correct, based on the name of the extension that placed the call.
The name of the extension, but what happens when those people with those extensions move to different rooms?
So that's where we get tricky. Is you have to take care of, is if you have roaming teachers that move between, then that's in that case we may want to leave this classroom field blank for roaming teachers and just let them know at what site, because the system controls the site. It'll always be the correct site and the correct person. But if you have roaming teachers, you may want to leave that.
We've mandated in our district all classroom phones remain the same extension. We don't allow moves of phones from classroom to classroom for this purpose. Right?
So when a teacher moves, they don't take their phone.
They get a new extension.
And part of that's for E911 that makes that up.
So what's your telco that you're using for this? Does every school have a its own telco, or you have centralized telco?
So for Beaverton School District, we're using Frontier SIP at 2 locations. So all the outer schools have an analog line for 911 capabilities or backup 911, but we use primary 2 location SIP. That all the calls for the whole district go out those 2 locations.
So you have an Intrado database you're updating?
Well, we have a company called E911 Enable, which is an enhanced 911 system that all of our calls go out to their server and track all of our calls and send the correct information to the
So if the teacher does drag a phone from classroom to classroom, you have to update that database.
We wouldn't have the only thing for this portion of it, yes. For the E911, it would relocate to a different switch in the building, and the switch is programmed to send out the right information. So even if they move their phone, we don't tell them this, but if they move their phone to a new building, it would reallocate to a new switch and send the correct call and information. We don't allow that. So.
The E911 ends up connecting to a switch port. It knows which port that phone came in on. So if any phone plugged into that port will deliver that room address. So as long as you don't have people moving cables on your switches without
And for the 911 operators, that's good. But for the pop-ups, that's manually done by me or my coworkers. So if they do move their phone, it's still going to say A105, even if they move their phone to A106. That's why we don't allow them to move.
So a lot of flexibility, to how we want to have that set up. The last one we'll show is a lockdown, and then we'll spend the rest of the time for any questions we have. In this case, Jerry talked about integrating to an access control system. It's a SIP connection. In my scenario, obviously I don't have an access control system with me, so I brought a strobe light that's connected via SIP. It's connected the exact same way, those devices that we use at Beaverton to connect the access control. So when you see the strobe go off, that's simply the same type of connection that we can integrate to an access control. I'm trying to think if we have any school districts using strobes. I'm not aware of any. We do have some school districts using reader boards that we integrate to as part of lockdowns. We can put messages across the reader boards in the hallways or in different parts of the schools as part of the integration. So in this case, I'm going to use a strobe similar to how we do an access control integration. So just like we showed in the in our screenshots and stuff, I have a lockdown button programmed on each of the phone or on this phone. As it initiates, it'll have the capability of placing a call to let you know lockdown was placed. We'll get a screen pop, strobe, and notifications.
You are about to initiate a lockdown. Press 1 to confirm activation of a lockdown.
Lockdown initiated.
Attention. This is the
School
short
is
term.
now in lockdown. Locks, lights, out of sight. The school is now in lockdown. Locks, lights, out of sight.
So we have our phone call ringing to a phone. That's playing us the information.
Emergency notification system calling. A lockdown event was generated by user Mike Dolph at extension 1003 from location at site Beaverton High School. Press any key to acknowledge locks, lights, out of sight.
So you notice I have put a speaker in the back of a PA speaker in the back of the room that's IP based that I can play, and I can play the announcements. In this case, we have the pre-recorded file that we're using. When you're using speaker overhead, they recommend using a pre-recorded file. It sounds a little bit better than the automated, kind of text-to-speech capabilities. So we can page to every speaker, in the building. We had the phone call, and we still have our pop-up here now with an orange lockdown alert. Same information here, and then we put, locks, lights, out of sight, the standard procedure that Beaverton is teaching all of their teachers, for lockdown. And then you notice the strobe light came on, and this light, when you place a call to it, it rings, it flashes for 30 seconds for lockdown, and then turns itself back off. So we have a lot of medical facilities and stuff that'll use strobe lights for emergency, notifications and stuff. So there's a lot of integrations that we can do and customize lockdown, lockout, 911, teacher assist, all kinds of different notifications. In total, the ShoreTel emergency notification system has 9 different notifications you can customize, one being emergency call, and then the other 8 are all customizable for different types of events that need to be triggered from either administration level or a teacher level. So, questions? Anybody has? I think we got 4 minutes, so right on time.
I'm still curious how you get your messages to the right groups of people. So if I have email, I can send that to SMS to have the text to opt into a text. But do you integrate with your Active Directory to know which location the people are supposed to be at, and what about multiple location people?
So the phone system knows based on the phone what location it is.
Right.
And so from that programming, then yes, we're directly connecting to our Active Directory security/email groups. And so those email groups, then we've tried, and I think 99% of them we've been able to stick with those groups, because that way they're automatically changed as people move in and out of the building. And so we use all of those AD groups. And we're just actually putting in the email address for that group into the system.
And that is actually programmed in the emergency notification system. That he didn't show you the programming portion of it, but you're able to select, add an email address, and then check mark which schools, what sites you want to email that person. And that's in the program this program here. So if you were to, if you had an email contact in here, you can just hit click Pat Johnson, and you can see how he can check mark what schools he wants notification from. So if he wanted notification from Beaverton High School, you just check mark each 3 of those, and he would get notification from that school.
We have a lot of roaming people. It's a big pain point.
And that's why we didn't go with individual email addresses. We only went with like administration at Beaverton High. We have groups that are set up, and it's constantly moving, so we didn't want to go with individual email addresses.
So I think we're just about out of time. Thank you very much. Big round of applause for our presenters. Another beauty of ACPE here is that our vendors stick around for the week, or for a couple days, and have the opportunity during some of the social events to grab a hold of them and ask questions. I know the folks from Beaverton are going to be wandering around and would love the opportunity to answer any questions about their support system. So thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for coming to our presentation.
It's getting warm here, isn't it?
How are you?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Figure since we're getting a bunch of noise, stop right now.
Yeah.
So, nice stuff. This is great stuff. We need
One of us talked normally. Yeah, I was like, I was worried we might run over time. I was like, there's too many questions. I just like I like talking, just like you.
Yeah, well, I think we piqued a little bit of interest.
Yeah.
Last time we did this, it was concept.
Yeah.
Now it's actually.
Well, it was all 911. Remember, it was just on the 911 piece, and then all the 911 enabled case. All the talk there. We just focused on 911.
So how are we going to do How would we do it?
Yeah. Yeah, they did. Yeah.
One of my favorites. Yeah. But I mean, I had problems the other day. The guy called session.
Oh yeah.
And their tech support is outstanding. So that's a recommendation to someone. I would definitely recommend it.
That's good. Yeah.
It's extremely pricey, but
I know, because I know like Renton was a little interested in it, but I don't know from a price.
boom. Yeah, barely made it.
I hope that we can have access to that.
Yeah.
You know, they said they're going to put it on their site. Oh, not your site.
This things are video.
Right, no. This is
Thanks. Now we got to get torn down. Yeah, you're not going to share yours.
Right.
Yep.
Although I'll just forward it to Melanie anyway. That's just an advantage, right? That's a really nice advantage. I can just pass it along. Or send it to goal. Like,
anything I can do?
Yeah, the phone bags are over there for the phones you go into. They're like underneath all that stuff. Yeah.
You're not stuck in the hallway this time?
No, not this time. You know, we graduated to a real booth. Yeah, we're in the same.
They signed up at the last second when they got stuck in the hallway.
Oh gosh.
Well, we're actually working on a connection now.
Yeah, for sure.
I know, it's warm in here.
Oh, okay.
How many years have you been doing regular? How many years consecutively have you taught?
I think it's either 4 or 5 or something like that.
Yeah.
Jason is the first year. He's been like 7. And like 7 or
6 times.
They're big 7th one.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so they're going to start promoting this.
That IP speaker goes in that box and working out well.
Good. Access control, NFC, badges.
All right, well, thanks for coming in, guys. Yeah, thanks for stopping in.
I know.
I'm actually going that way.
Oh, sorry. Walking in more here.
For this guy.
Yeah,